We're live. Hey, everybody. We'll give everybody a minute to tune in. But I'm excited to sit down and talk with you, sir. I know we've been chatting a little bit beforehand.
It's a good thing. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. I don't know how many people are tuned in, but we'll go ahead and start rolling. I'm here with Jim Senkewitz, one of the youngest NHRA. He looks pretty old.
I'm old.
No, nah. One of the young. How do you say it? You say you're the youngest announcer ever in the NHRA?
They told me I was the youngest drag strip manager in an NHRA track ever. And I was young. And I looked at him and I said, that gets me a cup of coffee or something? But now you look back and say, hey, that's pretty cool. I had my own NHRA track when I was 25 years old. So.
That's it. And then we'll get into that here in a second. I find all that stuff exciting. I met Jim back in Pittsburgh in 2010, and we've known each other ever since. I worked at the track with him. He was the track announcer. He knows everyone. We took him to SEMA in 2018, and he's like, I'm not going to know anybody in that joint. And he's walking around and being like, oh, hey, what's up? Oh, I know you. Oh, what's up? And it was just absolutely epic. And it was funny to me to see somebody who didn't realize how important they are to everybody, and everybody still remembers who Jim is. And I met him 10 years ago, and I can't forget him.
Yeah. I'll take that as a compliment. Thanks.
Oh, definitely. It's definitely a compliment, sir.
Good trip, that SEMA trip.
It truly was. It was a lot of fun. We were super busy. That was a nuts year. I remember that year so well because we were getting called every direction. You were rocking it out in the Trullers booth. I was trying to help in the Trullers booth, trying to pitch at the same time. It was so much fun.
I tell people it was the best car cruise I was ever at. There was cars everywhere.
I love the fact you always go around and get your pictures with the pretty ladies.
Yeah, what's that all about?
I know they flock you and they want pictures with you. It's crazy.
What's that all about? That started out at the World of Wheels show. The folks that do the Autorama, the World of Wheels show, they have a big one in Pittsburgh every year. And they call me, you the guy that does the reunions for the old drag strip? I said, you found me. They said, would you like to do a display in the World of Wheels car show? I says, no. I said, we do drag races. We don't do car shows. They said, well, you can come down and put a couple of cars in. I said, well, can I hand out flyers to advertise our drag race in September? And they said, sure. Okay. So I says, I'll get a couple of cars, and I got the old Christmas tree from the old drag strip, and we'll set up a booth. So we did. We set it all up on Thursday, and Friday the shows, they come on and made the announcement. The show will be opening in 10 minutes. And they start playing elevator music. And I look at my buddy, Bill Truby, our picture guy. I said, Bill, what the hell did I get us into? I said, this is really boring. They're playing elevator music. It's not like drag racing where you line them up and just then a couple of models come walking down. I said, I know what we're going to do. Come here, girls. You got to get your picture taken by the Christmas tree. And of course, they're looking for Santa Claus and the Christmas tree. No, it's just. So we did that all weekend long. Every pretty girl that come by, we shoved the husbands out of the way. Come here, girl, and you get your picture taken by the Christmas tree with the old guy here. So we started that at the World of Wheels. That was about 15, 16 years ago. We've been doing that now. So
I know, and I think when I went to World of Wheels, I went to World of Wheels out there in 2010, 11, and 12. Right. And it was 2011. I remember, because I had, officially met you, because it happens in January, February, if I remember right, out there.
January, yeah. Early.
Yeah, I remember it's when it's really cold, so I just started, I didn't start at the track till later that year.
Okay.
You
were there.
So it's like, yeah. I saw you at that show in 2010. I remember in 2011, I knew everybody at the show because we also had the girl racers there in 2011. That was really cool. Together. I love that because it had Mary Lou Norris.
Yeah.
What's that?
Lisa Fisher. They're going to put that back together. I talked to Lisa a couple of weeks ago. the chicks with slicks. They had a name for themselves. The drag racing girls. It's amazing. When I
Oh, I love it. And
go ahead. When I started with drag racing back in the 60s, women were not allowed in the pits. You didn't see girls drag racing, and then one by one. But now I don't know what the percentage is. When I'm up there announcing, I have as many women as I do men racing, and that's the way it should be.
so, who's the first female drag racer that you remember?
Racing at a track. I don't know. I'm going way back. Shirley Sheehan and Mopar. She raced super stocks. She's probably the first one. She was before Shirley Muldowney, early on. So I don't know. Bunny Burkett raced early on. So she was there running super stocks. And that was it. If you saw, we used to have powder puff races for the girls, after we had women in the pits, and we had powder puff races just for the girls so they can get out there and race. But they never raced in the regular eliminators. It was separate just for girls. So that's the way it was.
See, one thing I've loved is when being at Pittsburgh from when I was at Pittsburgh was I got to watch Mia go from a junior dragster.
There you go.
To the dragster.
Yeah.
To doing what she won the championship. Yeah. I can't remember which thing. And to me, I watched her go from junior dragster. I remember the first pass she made down the drag strip when she did that half pass, and it went. Do you remember when it scooted to the side? And
yeah.
I remember being so afraid. She came right back around, and she was not scared one bit. She's like, tires weren't warm enough.
That was what she said. No, I didn't hear that.
Yeah. I was like, and to me, that I was just like that. I just couldn't believe it back then. Seeing a girl so young and just so determined, so on point. And I mean, it's like, and that's like, to me, it's like so cool to see a kid go from that moment. And, I'm excited. Like, I don't mean to talk about other people's kids, but like Denneker's daughter, I saw on Facebook, she's going to be getting in the dragster this year.
Ashley. Yeah. She's so tall. She's a cutie.
Oh, man.
This kid
blows my mind. She's so tiny.
I explained to people, I said, there's hope for this country because these are competitors. They are competitors. You see them out there skipping around, jumping around, and goofing around, and they get on and they put their helmet on. Look out. They're going to chop your knees out from under you. They are competitors. I love it. I watched, you mentioned Mia Tedesco. She, when she was getting out of the juniors and getting ready to go into the big car, she would actually enter both cars, and she would race juniors and race in her bracket class, with the top class with her big dragster, a big block. And then, but I'm sitting up there. I have that unique perspective where I get to sit up in the tower with my computer watching all the incrementals on every run. But I watched that kid put up a 00 light in a junior dragster and then turn around and 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes later, she's jumping in the big dragster, putting up a 00 light. And then she's doing rounds. So she goes back in the juniors. She puts up a 011 light. And then she goes back into the big car, puts up a 00. I said, you can't do that. I can't do that. You couldn't do that. But that kid, she was that good. And I was not surprised when I heard she wanted to go NHR racing, when she wanted to go just travel the circuit. I says, that person, I am qualified to make that opinion. I says, she is that good a racer. Anybody that could do what she did when I sat there and watched those computer incrementals, when she jumped from one completely different format to another and still be that.
See, and I never got to see a lot of the numbers because I was always in the lanes.
No, you were out.
But you're awesome. You just get to see, when you see them come back up in the lanes, you're like, oh, they won, or like sometimes you catch the end of a few, or because you're pumping them down that line so fast. So when you get to see them come back and then you get to talk to them in the lanes, you're like, oh man, what'd you run last pass? That's when you get to hear the numbers, and they're like, yeah, I loved it. Like in Pittsburgh Raceway, like a lot of racetracks have a family,
Yes.
but that I know it's Keystone now, but I'm always going to refer to it as PRP because to me that's my PRP family.
You were there.
You know,
it was Mike Tedesco put the family together. It was Pittsburgh Raceway Park. It's a park. It's a family park. It's about the family, and it's still today. It's still that way. It's a good thing. So,
well, and I love how everybody bands together in like the Thinking the Nicky Foundation, the park that's out there,
yeah,
and all the just awesome stuff that happens there. It's just I don't know, like you don't see a lot of tracks like that. You know what I mean? You've been to a lot of racetracks.
yeah.
You know, I don't know. I'm not gonna dog every other racetrack in the world.
I can't say that. You know, we go to other racetracks that we're just passing through. You know, we just go for that day or whatever. But I think that's happening. I think those other tracks are tight also with the racers. Yeah, you see it. You see it on TV. Guy breaks his car and his competitor comes over and helps them put it back together and lends them a piston and a rod. And then they have to go out and race each other. You know, so. No, I don't know. Racers are special people. That's why I do this. It's just I like the races.
Let's go back to when you first started. What was your before you would go to you starting to race and everything like that? What was your first car?
So I have to go back before that. My older brother was in the cars, so he's 3.5 years older than I am. So so he got into the hot rod club. So they had the patches, the jackets. Cars, so
the little placards for their
exactly. I got one hanging here somewhere. The Piston Riders, the name of the club, with the aluminum license plate hanging. But I was always the punk kid. Take me with you. No, go away. You bother me. Mom, he won't take me with him. No, go, shut up. Go away. So he finally, took me to a couple of races, and I was hooked. And I was always getting hollered at for reading his hot rod magazines. They were only little tiny Carcraft magazines back in the 50s. This is going way back, So, but so I always wanted to go. So when I was in high school, so I think 1961 they took me to my first race, and over in Ohio. There wasn't any tracks here in Western Pennsylvania, so I went to my first race in 61, and I was hooked. I was just, this is way too cool. So we.
So what was it like at your first race?
So
you just heard the cars, or like was there a certain car you saw, or just the group of the people, the environment?
I have some little tiny black and white pictures I took. It was just like I was reading in the hot rod magazines. Guys had coupes, and guys had dragsters, welded pipes welded up with a blower motor stuck in there. So it's your buddy Bill Truby. You want to talk to him? So Bill's our picture guy from the track. So we I was just thrilled to get to see they had Corvettes racing and Thunderbirds racing back in those days, and I can remember 40 Ford coupes were still always my favorite. Before that, guys had a couple of those running that day. So, but back in those days, they were just starting to come out with everything was stock class, so they were starting to put bigger and bigger motors in the stock cars. So this is before super stock, so that didn't come along until later. But so that was great to see, the 406 Fords and the 409 Chevys and that sort of thing. But I was into all of it. Some guys are door car guys and some guys are dragster guys, and I was I just fascinated by the competition, I guess.
See, to me, I look back at them. That's when people were engineering stuff that was just crazy.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Well,
it was. Yeah, you're a fabricator, and you could appreciate it. The chalk on the garage floor. Let's lay out some pipes and weld them up, and we're going to build a dragster, and that's the way it was. It was marvelous.
They're putting their hands in their own life, because it wasn't like they manufactured a chassis back then.
No, there was
no. They made it up as they went, and they're like, they didn't know anything about Ackerman angles or anything like that. They knew they wanted to go straight.
Yeah, you couldn't order it from Summit. You built it, that was it. And in Pittsburgh, it was unique because we had the steel mills here. Everybody worked in the mills or worked in the shop, factory, or manufacturing. And so a lot of Westinghouse Electric was here. A lot of those companies unknowingly contributed to building some of these hot rods. I need some boilerplate. I know it's like it followed me home from work or whatever. So that was good. So a lot of the guys worked in manufacturing, so they were able to build things that work and bring them home and put it to use in the cars. That's the way it was back in those days, guys. I tell people, the guys come home from the Army, a lot of Vietnam was going on, so they come home from the Army and get a job in the mill and go buy a Chevy and go take it to the track, see what it's going to do. And the next week they come back and take the spare tire out and take the rear seat out and see if it goes faster. And the week after that, they put bigger tires on it, So it was just, that's the way it was back in those days. So, good stuff.
And everybody always focuses to me on the California side of drag racing in the 60s and 70s, and it gets glorified with like the beachiness and all that kind of stuff. But I think everybody always forgets about the East Coast tracks, where they're more like uphill in the trees. It honestly, I kind of like that feel of the East Coast track, the older East Coast tracks. It just has that grassroots feel. You know what I mean?
I had a Carl Carenza. Carl's got to be 78 years old, maybe, still racing. But when he was back in the early 60s, he was starting to hang out with some of them hoodlum hot rodders, and his parents said, we're going to have none of this. So they sent him away to college. They sent him to Southern California in the 60s to get away from hot rodding. So he's still racing. He's got a super stocker. He's still racing. So that didn't work out well for them.
So the era of cars we're talking about too are like back when they were doing front engine dragsters.
Oh yeah.
With the suicide, with the Widowmaker shaft right between your legs, when you get the drive shaft and you're sitting on it.
Oh yeah.
Right on the rear end. And
you got your legs up over the rear end.
Those were
no, they had
those were men.
Manly men. When I was running the starting line, 66, 65, 66, 67, two different times, twice this happened to me, where I was the first responder, where guys, the top fuel dragsters, they would blow a motor and all the nitromethane and oil would ignite on the headers, and it would hit the driver at 200 mile an hour in the face and stick to him. Oil and burning. So twice I was the first responder. I was the first one running over with a fire extinguisher, and both those front engine drivers, dragster drivers, they were out on the ground on fire, beating the fire out on their selves. And both those drivers said the same thing: shoot the engine, shoot the engine. And I'm laughing. You got a hole in your engine. It's okay. So I'm putting the fire out on them. But that's the mentality that you had to have to climb into that thing. It was you're gonna win the race. That was it. So,
gotta save it.
You have to get one of the Santucci family, D.A. Santucci. They had a ban on nitromethane back in the 60s. So at Indy a couple of years, they ran top gas, would have been the top class, no fuel. But D.A. Santucci had a blown Hemi dragster. And as he did his burnout, Buster Couch, the starter, walks over and tightens his helmet up for him. He reached under and gave his helmet strap a yank. And he had a wad of gum that he was chewing. And he choked on his gum. So now this is qualifying for Indy, for the biggest race of the year. You've been building your whole life for this moment, and you're asphyxiated. So what do? You shut the motor off, right? And get help. No, he stages it up, makes the pass, wins the race, and passes out. 200 some mile an hour, coasts to a halt down there in India so long. But they come over and revived him. He was dead. He wasn't breathing. but they woke him up and got him some oxygen. He said, "Did I win?" And they said, "Yeah, okay." It didn't matter if he died, but did I win? So they took him to the hospital. He just left. He came back to the track, and he ended up winning the race. He has the trophy for top 1969. So it's known as the bubblegum race in NHRA lore history. So, but that's the mentality that those front engine dragster drivers had. It was it's just unbelievable. It was just focused.
See, to me, it's such an incredible time, and like in the history of racing and stuff like that. I love looking at the comparison of like East to West Coast, like what was going on and like what they were doing. It seemed like it. I don't know. It was always, who was it? It was, you had West Coast. You had the Snake.
Sure,
yeah, Don Pedrome, and Don Garlitz was West Coast at that time, wasn't he?
He was Florida. No, he was Florida. He was East Coast.
Okay, he
Florida. Yeah. So, but
okay, I just remember like him and Pedrome and him always hitting it up.
But
I remember like there was one other East Coast guy that was.
That's exactly what you were saying, and it was billed as East Coast versus West Coast. Wherever they happened to be racing that day, they would travel the country. But Tommy Ivo was big time West Coast guy back in the 60s, 50s, 60s. They it was you'd sit there and read your Hot Rod magazine, what the big dogs did out at the West Coast, and says, "Well, we did that last week here," but you didn't get any press. They got all the press. They had all the magazines out there and all the newspapers. Everything was West Coast, West Coast, West Coast. So when they come through East Coast, if the East Coast guys had a chip on their shoulder, they're going to kick their butt, and they did. It was always good racing. So good competition.
That's one thing I've always loved about most racers. They'll be pissed that they lose a race or something like that, but it's like you're still family. You know what I mean? And they're still empathetic towards each other. So where they'll, they care of each other. They'll rub it in that they lose or that the other person lost, but they don't want to lose without racing. I've seen guys wait for the other guy's car to cool down to make sure he's going to be 100% because he wants to prove that he's
he's
better.
That in the staging lanes. How many times did you see that in the staging lanes? Yep. Good move.
Oh, so many times they'd wait it out, and
the other
guy like, "Oh man, no rush," and like he got everybody wanting to close the track because Mike, was like worried about the lights.
We're ready to go home. Nope, we'll wait. It's okay. So, that's an empathy thing you're talking.
Exactly, and that's where I wanted to tie in, because I think you're one of the most empathetic guys I've met in the race industry. But I think it's a great thing because everybody. You know what I mean? And it's being able to get you into so many things and around so many things, because you're always kind of in awe. When you're around, you're so happy for everyone.
There you go.
I can remember when we were doing the kids racing. We do juniors and then we get the teenagers in the high school cars.
Right.
And they were racing 8th mile, and when those kids would hear them announce their name and you would add on stuff to it, you could see the look on their faces. It meant the world to them. You know what I mean?
I think it is so important. They taught me that when I was a kid, that the man's name is so important. Make sure you pronounce it right, and make sure. And everybody likes to see their name in the lights somewhere. So if I can have that microphone and build up some racer, that's special. I mean something to them. And I had the opportunity to do that back in the 60s announcing, and And I still get people come up to me 50 years later and tell me what I said 50 years ago about them racing their car. And I says, well, that tells me they really mean something, that it meant that much to them for them to remember that all those years, you know. So
See, I almost think some of those kids would just go out and get in the staging lanes just because, like, you know, the whole track got to hear their name and
sure,
everything like that, because you'd see them light up before they even went up to the lane.
oh, absolutely. No, that's funny. Now everybody has FM radio in their cars. I'll see guys. I'll be up there announcing, and they'll wave to me when they're staging up. I said, don't listen to me. Stay focused on the race. So that's funny. We've been blessed. I had the track. They finally opened the drag strip in 1964 in Pittsburgh. So here's the story. First week they opened up, and it was $1.50 to get in. Second week, it's $1.50 to get in. Third week, it's another $1.50 to get in. Well, who has that kind of money? So the fourth week, I'm broke. So I hitched a ride out. I didn't have a car. I hitched a ride out with another guy. And Walt Mincer was the manager of Pittsburgh International Dragway. And staging lanes, I'm sorry, not they had classification lanes where you had to be classified. This is before bracket racing. They had to open your hood and check your motor and make sure you had the right carburetor. They checked everything. So all these cars are in the classification line, and here comes this high school kid looking for the track manager. And I said, Walt, did I ever show you my portfolio? He says, excuse me, what? I said, you know, my portfolio. I says, my art portfolio. I said, I have awards I've won from the Kauffman Foundation and from the Mellon Foundation. I've gone to school at the Carnegie Mellon for art school. And he looked at me, and there's all these guys pulling their headers down and putting their slicks on and firing their motors up. And here's this kid talking about art. He says, what the hell are you talking about? You know, he knew my brother. So I says, I wanted to tell you, I says, I've been watching the races for the last 3 weeks. And I says, your people in the tower are really having a big problem reading the shoe polish on the cars. Because who's ever putting the shoe polish on or painting it, the shoe polish on, it's doing a really shabby job. And I could see reruns and screw ups. And I says, so here's the deal. I said, if you let me I'll paint all the shoe polish on all the cars coming in every morning if you let me in the afternoon for free to watch the races. He looked at me, he says, you're crazy. Hey, somebody get this kid a shoe polish bottle. And that was it. I started working at the track that day because I didn't have $1.50 to get in. You know, it's like so that's a true story. Walt Mincer was the manager that he hired me. So every Sunday morning I'd go out there and paint shoe polish on 300 cars and then go up and watch races in the afternoon. I got in for free. Life was good. So I was still in high school.
Well, the cool part is you got to intermix with the racers at the same time, right?
Oh, absolutely. So I got to talk to them all.
You were deep in right in high school.
Right there. So it was fun. So I always wanted, growing up when I was a little kid, you know how you'd be at a wedding or a funeral or something, and everybody, what do you want to be, Johnny, when you grow up? And everybody wanted to be a cowboy or a fireman. And I wanted to be a drag strip. I wanted to be the starter. I wanted to be a flagman. My dad would bat me in the back of the head. With being a wise guy, I said, no, I want to be a flagman. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world.
It's still my favorite place to be at a drag strip.
Yeah, right. The best spot in the world.
And when they take off,
yeah. So I'd
go up there and hang out with David Green.
Yep. Oh, Greenie.
And just chill for a while, you know.
So, but
yeah, I miss him. He was such an amazing dude.
He was a rock. So we went and here's me. I'm a high school kid painting shoe polish on their cars. So I'd go out there. If I got up the track before time trials were over, I'd say, go ahead. You want to take a break? Go get a hot dog. And I'd be reaching for the box. Let me run the starting line. Let me run the starting line. I was brokenhearted. They had a Christmas tree, a Mickey Mouse Christmas tree. Somebody made out of pipe and some light bulbs, just to blink, blink, go. So we didn't have a flag then, but I still want to run the starting line. So I'd always go up there and help them run time trials for half an hour or something. So the second year they put Jack Pack, they put him up in the tower. So they made me the starting line official. So I got to be, I was a year out of high school. I got to be the starting line official. So
you'd already achieved your dream.
yeah, I peaked early in life. It was all downhill after that. I'll tell you a good story. We were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. You have to go way back, 65, 66. There was all the top field dragster cars. You're talking about the front engine dragster cars. There's no starters on them. You had to push start them. And there's no reversers on them. You had to pull them back. So what we'd do, push them down to get two pickup trucks, push them down the track to build up oil. Guys would get out of the truck and pull the car back and swing it out, and then push it back towards the starting line down the track and fire them up. So now you're on the starting line. Here comes two top field dragsters headed the wrong way, fired up. So you gotta turn around, and they're made to go straight. They're not made to turn. So you have to make how many cuts to get it faced in the right direction. So the guy that they used to have, they called them weed burners. The headers used to come straight out of the engine. So somebody invented the zoomy headers to cut up and blow the junk off the tires and keep the tires heated up. So the zoomy headers were great for racing. But if you're yanking on a roll bar, trying to pull that dragster back, those zoomy headers are belching raw nitro right up your nostrils. So you got to see, is this fun or what? So you're pulling this car back and trying to get it swung again and pulling it back again. And this thing is just spitting raw nitro right up your face. So that's why I always wore a hat. You pull a hat down over, but you're coughing, gagging, spitting, snot running out of your face. It's wonderful. It's a lot of fun. So now you got two top field dragsters rolling up towards the starting line. You got to run up, grab the starter box, stage them up, click, run them off, right? So I'm running up. We had two top field dragsters, and I'm snotting, sneezing, just gagging, coughing, snorting, just. And I glanced over my shoulder and I saw a drop of fluid. Thumbs down, shut it off. You're disqualified. Stage up the left lane, run them off. I'm still standing up there gagging, coughing. Would you believe Don Garlitz gets out of his car screaming? I just disqualified Don Garlitz. I'm a year out of high school, right? I know everything. What's the politically correct term? He was MFing me. He was screaming. And I'm screaming, get that car the hell out of here. I got two more cars pushing down out of the pits coming out. Get it out of here. And he's screaming at me. And I'm screaming at Garlitz, get it out of here. Yeah. So we push him out of here, and he's still yelling at me. So we run off the next two and the next two. And I think we had an 8-car field that day. So about an hour later, it had to be CT Lemons. What was his name? His pit crew grunt. His guy comes down. He said, "Mr. Garlitz wanted to thank you." I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, when he got back to the pits, he says that was an oil line starting to leak on the right-hand side of the motor. He said he would have got about halfway down the track when that let loose. He said he was in the right lane. The left slick would have had traction, would have put him right in the guardrail about halfway down. Mr. Garlitz wanted to thank you. I says, listen, this isn't, you're not authorized to be out here in this area on the starting line. So get the hell out of here. I threw him out too. And it's like, if Mr. Garlis has something to say to me, he knows where to find me, you know. So get out of there. I threw him out. So at the end of the day, we're all down getting our couple dollars for working that day. And I was a kid. Everybody else is older than I am. So they're all laughing at me. You dumbass, you threw out Don Garlitz. So I said, shut up. I said, you come down here and leak on my starting line, I'm going to throw you out too. And Ed Witzberger owned the track. He come down. He says, do you know how much I had to pay him to come out here and race? And you throw him out. I said, you come down here and piss on my starting line, I'm going to throw you out too. I don't care if you own the place. Get out of here. You know, they're all laughing at me. So that was it. My claim to fame. I got to disqualify Don Garlis. I wonder if Don remembers that. I'll have to ask him next time we see him. But that was a long time ago. It was 1965. How long ago was that?
What's cool is that like you've met so many of the awesome old time racers like Bruce Larson and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, I still remember meeting Bruce for the first time on the starting line there at PRP.
Well, I'm trying to interview him. You're trying to bug me. Get out of here, kid. You're not old enough to know who Bruce Larson is. That was a cool story.
I still got my pack.
There it is. There it is. He took care of you. Bruce Larson. You told him you had the Bruce Larson, USA 1 Chevrolet on your wall growing up as a kid. That was too cool.
Oh, I still have everything. Like to me, I've been like that's the stuff I've always collected. Like I loved, because you know I'm an artist, and I loved how everybody else, when the USA 1 car came out, and the USA 1 car was more subdued but more cool. Everybody else had the big gold letters, and everything was leafed, and it was this. USA 1 was just literally a white Camaro with red and blue with a license plate and like a little gold USA 1 on the door. That's it. Simple, sweet, and then he was just whooping ass.
He got his patriotic message across. That was intentionally done. He was still is a patriotic gentleman. So he won 1989. He won the world championship for funny cars that USA 1. So Bruce Larson.
Yes, I still remember him from even the older stuff, because all my dad's old hot rod magazines I dig through as a kid.
Sure.
And all the old race mags and stuff like that. You'd see him in the old cars and stuff like that. And then I started watching drag racing in probably about 85.
Okay.
You know, with my dad, because you watch it on TV.
I love it.
That's all. I always loved him because it was the USA 1 car, and I had a USA 1 truck, and then you go to the store, you could buy USA 1 gear. I had a USA 1 jacket at one point. Yeah, it was it was like he was an icon, you know, or they were trying to make him an icon, almost like John Force is now, you know.
He was one of the East Coast guys that kicked butt across the country, across the West Coast. He'd go out there and tear him up. So he was a competitor.
Yeah, it always felt like he was racing for America, though.
Yeah.
It felt like the other teams were racing for their race teams.
Yeah. No.
Like when they would interview Bruce and they'd have him in the pits, you know, he'd always thank everybody at home, or, you know, he was always talking to everyone. So he always felt like he was talking to you at home or talking to somebody else, you know.
Good people. So it's
really neat.
You have to head east on November, usually the second week in November. He has an open house. Invites he kept all his cars. Nobody, him and Don Garlis, the only ones that, if you're a racer, you automatically, your car you race this season is not going to be competitive next season. So you have to build a new car. So they would cut up the old car or pull the motor out and get rid of it, or vice versa, get a new motor and junk it. So he managed to keep all his cars. So once a year, he invites everybody up, has a lovely open house, and just invites everybody up to see his barn. He has, everywhere you look is there's his pit pass from the 1959 Nationals and stuff, you know, it's like in the trophies and national event trophies and Wally's everywhere. So it's just,
you guys invited me a few times, and that's where that little metal piece comes from, is one of his.
Yeah. Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, things I've wanted to go to one so bad, and well, next time he has one that's actually open,
Yeah.
you know, I want to go because like to me it's just
He canceled last November, but we're on for this November. So he always asks me, "How's your buddy doing?" I can't remember your name, but he knows. He knows you're a Bruce Larson fan. He wants to know how you doing. He checks up on you. I have to tell him you're out wrecking motorcycles for fun. No,
yeah. Shoot, that was a wreck in August that I'm still dealing with.
man, that's not good for your health. Stop it.
Oh, my health's been freaking not well for a while. I'm doing all right though. I kick.
You look good. You look good. Keep trucking.
Well, that's the thing with age, you know. You do so much dumb stuff and you end up getting your butt kicked.
Don't talk about age. I'm going to be 75 next month. It's like, how can that be?
You told me you were 50.
Yeah, I lied. It's like, my body knows different.
So let's get back to the cars because I've always loved the fact that you're into racing, you're into cars, all kinds of stuff, but your car selection is always very peculiar. Like
yeah.
For what you like to drive and what you like to watch going down a track is always opposites.
My first car was a 57 Chevy, naturally. And then my second car, I bought a 56 Corvette. This Corvette was built as a race car. It was a race at Sebring. It was a race car. A buddy of mine cut the roll bar out of it and put it back on the street. I bought it off of him. And I drove that thing for 2 years. My wife laughs. She says that car was up on blocks more than it was on the ground. Because it was a race car. I was trying to drive it for everyday work. It just doesn't work. So that cured me. I kept telling people my next car, air conditioned cruise control. I said, I'm not a mechanic. Yes, I'm a car guy. Yes, I love race cars, but I have manual dexterity. It's not one of my, no, it's like, so the next car I bought a 64 Caddy convertible, with air conditioning, cruise control, and power seats. And so you never know when I drive. So I got 2 Oldsmobiles right now. Currently, remember Oldsmobile? They used to make them a long time ago.
Oh yeah, well, I've always loved an Olds. I had a 70 Olds Cutlass W35.
Oh, good night. All right.
Which is it's the 442, but with the wing.
Right. W30, 31, 35.
35.
Yeah.
I didn't even know it was a W35 car when I bought it. I thought some idiot put a wing on it. I filled the holes in the trunk. I thought it was just a Cutlass Supreme.
Okay.
Had no idea what it was. Because on the W35, they don't put the 442. They leave the Supreme emblem, and they because it has the dual exhaust and everything like that. But like the car I got was that piss yellow.
Yeah.
I was like, no way, this is anything cool. It was.
It was cool. Should have kept that one.
I'm just dumb.
That's when I do all these reunions.
Yeah.
I
laugh because like I look at you posted pictures before, like you've had a Bug.
Oh yeah.
So you got the VW Bug, and then the Oldsmobile you got isn't even a normal Oldsmobile. It's a 5 manual 89 drive.
Even the Oldsmobile,
with a Muncie in it.
Yeah. It's a Muncie 5-speed. It's a 89 Olds Cutlass with a Muncie 5-speed stick. It's got a sideways V6 front-wheel drive with a Muncie 5-speed in it. They made 232.
Well, and then your daily driver. What is that thing? I don't mean to make fun of it, but like to me, it's like you see you rolling into a racetrack. Mr. Race Car Guy, I know everybody, and you're driving 80's 3.8 liter Oldsmobile.
So that's an Oldsmobile that closed up in 2004. Well, they knew 2 years in advance they were going to close down. So their plan was to make a final 500 special edition for each of their model lines. So they had the Bravada, the Intrigue, the Aurora. What else did they have? So they made a final 500 special editions for each of their model lines. And then the Alero was the final run that they made. So my daily driver is number 81 of the final 500 Oldsmobiles ever made. So they made 136 million Oldsmobiles over the years. So there was only 419 made after mine. So I tell people, what's probably the newest Oldsmobile you've ever seen in your lifetime? So it's like, and that's my daily driver. We just had a headlight put in it yesterday. We were working on it, but
you always have you always have those unique little weird things about your cars, and that's what I love. Is like they're just you go for the mileage and everything else like that, but you always have to have something a little bit
something
quirky.
different. Yeah, anybody can drive whatever. So I like the Oldsmobiles. I always did like Oldsmobiles. I had a bunch of them over the years. So I ended up, just so happens, I got 2 Oldsmobiles now. My wife drives the one, and the final 500, she's sitting in the Walmart parking lot. It's a daily driver. So having fun. So,
let's go back to you at the racetrack. So you got the job right after high school. So that's PID, right?
Right.
Pittsburgh International Dragway.
Right. Opened in 64. So I graduated in June of 64.
So how long were you there? I mean, I know because I know you do PID stuff, reunions, like that. Because I always get confused by the history of where it was at, because that track was south of Pittsburgh, right?
It was south of Pittsburgh, near Bridgeville. It was 12 miles south of Pittsburgh. They advertised it. So they opened in 64. So the 65, 66, 67, I ran the starting line, and then 67, 68, 69, I was the announcer. 70, I was announcer. And then in 71, they made me the manager of the track. But I had done everything. I'd sold hot dogs. I ran the starting line. I worked in the tower. I did, so I didn't think anything of it. I've been working there how many years? And so they said, so Jim, you're the manager. I said, whatever, no problem. And I was trained in management. Anyhow, that's what I did for a living. So I just had a ball. We had my own racetrack. So ran at 71, 72, 73. And then I got transferred to West Virginia for my real job. So I gave the track over to one of the other guys, took over as manager, Billy Nesbitt. So he was a great kid. But so I worked there from 64 to 73. That was the track ended up closing in 76. A lot of the tracks closed in the mid 70s with the oil embargo, and they quit making muscle cars, and the whole scene.
So that's what took that track out, was the with all the fuel crisis, everything like that.
Right. That just wiped out about half the tracks in the country. They started importing these little Datsun things. Like, what are we going to do with this? So they just and if you had back in those days, if you had a 413 or 426, or you had a 427 Chevy, you left it in the garage. You didn't bring it out. Your neighbors looked down on you like, what are you trying to ruin the country? It's like so people, they would have cars hidden away and they wouldn't drive them. They'd have a little 6-cylinder or something to buzz around in. It was just different times back in the mid 70s. So the racing scene was unpopular, we'll say. It's like
I can see it there.
Yeah.
So when PID closed, what happened to the space it was at?
It's actually still there. The asphalt still there. It's folks that own it. They do some mining and logging and whatever, and they own thousands of acres around Western Pennsylvania, the tri-state area. They used to open up the mines every once in a while. The price of coal would go up. There's still mines up in those, up the holler. So it was still around.
So you think PID will ever re-exist again where it was and relive the nostalgia?
I get that question regularly. People will holler at me, Jim, why don't you open that track back up? And so my comeback is, number one, there's a problem because cars go 100 mile an hour faster now. they used to go 220, they go 320 now. So that's a problem. Track's not big enough. But the where we used to have cows and horses up on the hills and the farms out there, they've grown houses. So the urban sprawl, it's just
Oh,
a lot of
it'd just be kind of cool just to even just have it as a nostalgia effect, like almost just, I
yeah.
don't know. I guess you can't really limit racers because as soon as you try and start limiting racers, then they try and go past it. So
Yeah.
it's like a never.
I thought
So
about
when did Keystone actually become the track out there? Because
yeah, that's okay.
Keystone,
The PID opened in 64, and then Keystone was the new track. It opened in 67. 67. So,
and that was where it was. That's where it's at currently now, right?
Yep. So they were looking for a place on the other side of Pittsburgh, and they found that property out there. There was an airport on the other hill over. It was pretty flat, so they were able to buy that property and build a drag strip in 64. 67 rather, so 67 Keystone opened. So
Is there a lot of battling back and forth at the tracks back then, like side to side, or because I know having two racetracks that close together would be a little bit kind of crazy.
Yeah, you would think that okay, why don't you race on Saturday and I'll race on Sunday? No, they both race on Sunday. They beat each other's heads. It's a competition thing. They competed against each other. So you talk to the racers, and if they got knocked out first round at one of the tracks, they could hightail it across town sometimes and make first round at the other track. They race both tracks the same day, some of them. So, but they competed against each other. They put their big events up against each other. It's like you had to make a choice. So, but it was interesting.
It'd be kind of cool, honestly, because I know how the racers are around there. Because there's a lot of people that get track dedicated. Like the little battle between Dragway 42 and PRP and all that kind of Beaver Springs and all that stuff. Like I love the camaraderie of like the little tracks, like kind of versus each other.
Well, that's the bracket finals. We have the IHRA bracket finals at Keystone, and you see the tracks teaming up with their fellow competitors and competing against the other tracks. That's a great weekend when they do that. Bring them in. That's why Bill Truby was calling me earlier. We're going out February 13th. We're going Eastern Museum of Motor Racing. Put that on your list. Eastern Museum of Motor Racing in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Wonderful facility. But, we're going out there to give a talk on the drag strips in Western Pennsylvania and the tri-state area. So we're just comparing notes when these tracks opened up and how long they were open. And each track it's like having, three children. They all have a different personality. They're all unique. Each of these tracks were the same, but they were all unique, so it's interesting. So we're just.
Well, that's why I kind of like the East Coast. That's why it was in the beginning when we first started talking, like the Pittsburgh Raceway kind of thing. Like I got the great vibe there. Like it wasn't just that it was close. Dragway 42 was kind of cool, Beaver Springs, but E-Town was one of my favorites.
Oh, we love.
I'm so sad that track's gone.
I found out the guys that worked for me at PID found out before I did actually that one of the perks, if you're managing an NHRA track, you get credentials, you get free passes for all the NHRA national events. So it's like, so all the guys say, hey Jim, we're going to Englishtown next week. Okay, go on. Hey Jim, we're going to Reading, we're going to Indy. We go. So it's like, yeah, let's go. Dump some guys in the car and head out the road. So Englishtown was always a great track. That's a sad. The real estate up there is just so valuable. That, we're surprised it stayed open as long as it did. So.
Well, that's and that's I still don't understand why they closed it. They're just turning it into a parking lot for some other crap. But to me, it's like tearing down history. You know what I mean? Like, can't they? There's plenty of other places to move, plenty of other places to do things. Leave up what we have. You know, there's maybe, yeah, there's not a lot of people that love it, but it's going to have a meaning to somebody at some point. You know, I don't know. One question I had to ask of you, like when you were going through watching all the races and stuff like that, watching the safety equipment come in over time, you know, was it, I know the racers had to fight back, but is it kind of silly now to kind of look back at it and be like, they were fighting over this? You know, look at what we have now, you know?
Yeah, racers. The key word there is racers fighting back. So it was the safety had to keep up with the cars, kept going faster, you know. And to this day, you know, I'm fortunate. I came out of retirement 10 years ago, 11 years ago. I've been announcing drag races again, and I'm watching factory cars come out and run as fast as you know, dragsters would run, you know, gas dragsters would run back in the days. So no, safety's always been a big part of it. I can remember my older brother and his car club. They would go out and set up in a local shopping center plaza in the early '60s, and have a opportunity to install seatbelts in your cars. Cars didn't have seatbelts, so it's like, so they would sell them to you and install them for you, so your family could have seatbelts in your cars. And when I've watched a lot of that safety morph into what Detroit puts out, what the world puts out for safety in their cars, you know, so it's made drag racing, I think, has done a great job of making everything safer, all the cars safer for us. Disc brakes
Oh, yeah.
long, you know, it's like so,
Well, that's I've always found it intriguing how like they both have always shared, you know, they always say win on Sunday, you know, sell on Monday.
oh yeah,
And
that
it,
was
to me,
great.
it was always kind of neat. Like you see the safety stuff that was coming in the drag car, and then like a lot of the cars would, you know, people would eventually step into it. I remember like, oh, I don't remember, but I remember I collect the books on cars for some reason. It's one of those things I like to collect, the
Good.
owner's manuals.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm and you can see them start coming in the 65, 66 in some of those manuals where it's talking about the belt above, and I've seen it in the cars, you know, where it's clipped above and, you know, comes down and gives you that feel, and they advertise it as a race belt.
Sure.
You just would wear the lap belt when you're driving, but when you go race, you'd throw on the race belt.
Unclip it. Yep. That was big.
So you'd have your shoulder strap. And to me, that was kind of a neat thing I saw in the advertising in the owner's manual. The fact that they were branding it as a race thing, and that leads much into that win on Sunday, you know, sell on Monday.
The old drag strip we keep talking about, it was opened at 64 and closed in 76. And I explained to people, muscle cars came around 64 and left around 76. And it was just a special period of time. It's not going to happen again. A bunch of us happened to be teenagers right there. It was great. We just got to live the muscle car era, but that was all win on Sunday and sell on Monday. That was all it was.
Well, said that
It was
era
wonderful.
to me is like, I always say the cool cars died in 72. Like nothing cool was made after that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
It's like
it was way downhill. Yeah.
You know, and it was so cool to like see them, but it's like I love how the cars were built, but a lot of things you don't see is like you see what was happening to the muscle cars, but the scene on the outside was what was driving the muscle cars. You know, the street rodders, your hot rodders, your people that were actually driving them, the people that were taking them to those limits at the track. And it wasn't just one or two. You'd have, if you look at I've seen pictures where you'll see just lines and lines of like 64 GTOs lined up with like, you know, 65 goats and 65 Dodges. And it's just like, you're like, what the heck? And the lines are just miles long. And you know, they're all going to run similar times.
Sure.
like this guy'd be like, well, I did just this little bit, and I think that's what's give me the edge.
That was that class
And it was
racing. The class
so
racing
cool to me.
was so great to watch. You'd have A stock, B stock, C stock, and A stock automatic and B stock automatic, C stock, all the way through the alphabet almost. But so you were going out to be the fastest C stock automatic that day to get a trophy in that class. And there'd be, a dozen cars show up in your class or more. You had to.
I know. We'll break into some because like we keep mentioning bracket racing, and I know a lot of people that listen don't actually understand what we're talking about there. Bracket racing is when you put a time on your car and you shoot for it. You run a package. You might actually be able to explain the package better than me, Jim. But like basically, I'll put it in kind of layman terms. Your package would be like if you put in, I think I'm going to dial this in. Let's say a 10 flat.
Right.
You run a 005 light. You know what I mean? Your 005 light, and you finish at a 1015. So that 1015 would add on to your 005 light, so you'd be a 155 package, right?
Yep, exactly.
And the winner has the smaller package.
Exactly, always. Yep. Between
so, and that's how you win is and best off the line.
Yeah. So the problem is if you're sitting in the grandstands, you don't know who had the better reaction times. And one has 11:32 down and one has a 14:37 down. And you can't tell. This guy went across the line first, but he went too fast. You can't
broke out of his box.
Yeah, he went a 14:36 on a 14:37 down. It's like you're disqualified. So it's hard to watch a bracket race. So it ends up there's no spectators watching them. It's like I understood when they lined up two GTOs to see who got the line first. One, I understood that. But if now we got to dial in and the reaction times and what, it's like.
Well, and then you got guys that are holding power in reserve and tapping the brake at the end.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So
make the other guy run under because he thinks he thinks the other guy's package is closer, so he gives it a little bit of extra boost. The other guy fucking tapping his brake at the tail, and it's like, man, we're all just running off of who's the best guesser, and y'all now just playing like I got more power, so I can guess better than you.
Who was telling me one of the racers had a button on his steering wheel? What's that for? Brake lights. So you go find out in the track. Oh, he's hitting his brakes already. So the other guy would hit his brakes and lose, misses dial in. There's a lot of stuff going on, but it's only interesting to those two participants. If you're sitting in the grandstands, it's like, I'm going to go to a hot dog. I don't know what's going on here. It's like, so it's hard to attract the crowd.
Well, that's why I kind of like the pro stock and stuff like that, where they shoot for closest to the time. And it's like
stocks heads up.
And at least it gives you something to want to watch. Or ADRL, I love watching, of course. Pro stocks, I love watching. Anytime the gassers are in town, because it's just
pro
run what you brung, go as fast as you can.
Yeah, just everybody. That's where you see your national events or top fuel, and just heads up. I can understand that. I go watch that. So, it's hard on a regular weekend basis when you're running dial-ins. It's hard to get a crowd to sit there and watch them all day long like we used to watch.
Well, that's why like the flashlight drags and stuff like that. It's where a lot of that's been getting a lot more fun. Where you just run the Christmas tree off the line. All they get's a win light at the end. Run what you brung, line them up, and let's just have some fun on a weekend. Just grudge match it out.
The first time I went to the flashlight drags, I'm thinking to myself, this is really going to be hokey. This is really going to be backwoods. This is really, after all the national events I've been to and involved with racing all my life, and I was there like 10 minutes and I says, I got this. This is what NHRA started out to be. Let's give the kids a place to get off the street, go line up against their buddy's car and see who's fastest. Go. On your mark, go. It's like, I got this. This is great. What a great concept, just to borrow a airport runway and line the cars up. Got some cute girl with a flashlight, blink, go. It's like, so I told them years ago, so anything I could do, call me. I'm in. So we do a Pittsburgh International Dragway reunion day down at the Flashlight Drags, and so the FHA come along and closed most all of them down now. They can't. The FAA uses they use your airport as an emergency landing and put all these lights and equipment on there, so you can't use your airport for anything other than airplanes. It's like, wait a minute, it's my airport. No, FAA owns you now. So they closed down. We only have one still remaining south of Pittsburgh and Waynesburg.
That's when you just got to start tapping Greg and be like, hey, Greg, let us have a Tuesday.
Yeah, just line them up. No Christmas tree. I always wanted to be a flagman. Did I mention that? So,
I was going to say, you can still use the Christmas tree and the wind lights, just turn off the boards.
You understood it when you were running the staging lanes. When we're running just time trials or just test and tune night at the drag strip, it's great. We'll have people come out and watch that because they know that these two guys have their Mustangs. They want to run each other. People understand that.
People get mad because I used to run the staging lanes and I'd use the last two lanes over to the left to pick up all the grudges.
Yeah, grudges.
And like
I still do
people
that.
are like, well, why are you doing that? I'm like, if they come up to me and let me know, I use these two lanes to do that. And Jamie used to get pissed, and Carmen got it. Carmen totally used to go, yeah, man. He goes, because we get people up on the line wanting to see those two guys run because they'd be up there shit talking.
Sure.
For hours.
That's what it's all about. That's what racing is. My car's faster than yours. It started out with my horse was faster than your horse. That's just before cars. Well,
I miss encouraging it because when you got to encourage it, it got to tease them a little bit. And be like, oh, he got you off the line, and you come back up and you line them right back up together.
There you go. Put them back on again. That's
we'll stop these excuses. Come on.
BJ, you were my hero. I'll be up there announcing time trials, and they're just pulling two cars out of the lane. So I'll have a pickup truck and a dragster. How am I going to make a race out of this? Make it interesting. But then the next pair coming out will be a dragster and a pickup truck. It's like, you guys couldn't give me two dragsters and two pickup trucks. And you understood that. You caught on to that. You would line up the two pickup trucks and make a dragster wait for another dragster.
Oh yeah, I hold people up and people would get mad, but I was like, man, let's have some fun with this.
Let's go see who got the fastest pickup truck today. Oh man, okay, go. That's the new hot rod. But
they were always against on time trial nights having guys run the mod cars against the street cars. And I'm like, I think you're afraid he's gonna beat you.
There you go. And they would.
Sometimes, yeah.
Drag races are fun. Just good stuff.
Well, I love the pureness about it all. You know what I mean? Because it's just, I think of it as a place where guys are able to show emotions and they're not able to show emotions anywhere else.
Well,
so it's a place they can let their guard down. Some guys go hunting. Some guys are fishermen. Some of us like to throw raw fuel in the air and tire smoke.
Make noise. I love it. Well, you see the emotion at the end of the night when the guys are in the winner's circle and they work their buns off all day. You try to interview them and they're just choked up, and you could tell. It's like, oh, God bless you, buddy. You done good.
Oh, one of my favorite racers to watch was Nick Bowman.
Oh yeah.
Bowman.
Oh yeah.
He's a foot breaker. Watching him and Mark go at it all the time.
They are to beat. You got to go through those two guys to get there.
Oh yeah, and just watching Nick would get so mad. Like if he had gotten staged up and there's oil on the track and we had to back him up, he had to go through his routine again because he had a routine. This is how he does it. He warms up the car. He spins up the tires this way. He does this. He does this. He does this. I loved it. Like the rituals that guy went through to make sure that car, because like that car, he was running times that were so consistent. Being a foot brake car, it didn't make sense. He was going against cars people invested 40, 50 grand in. And Nadine, I think at the time, was maybe $10,000-$12,000 car. And he's out there slaughtering because he had a routine, because he was down pat with what he did. The car was set up so perfect every time, and I loved it.
I sit there and watch their computer printouts in front of my little screen when I'm announcing. It's like, how do you guys do that? It's impossible to put all that together and come out with those results. It just comes from hard work. Like you say, they got a routine going. They amaze me. That's wonderful.
Oh, the dedication those guys have, and it blows your mind away. Like
Marky will tell you, this is me. This is what I do. This is my life. It's like, this is right here, right now. Go race. But there's racers like that. So, and we alluded to that earlier. What I saw going on in Pittsburgh in the early 60s and into the 70s, and that I realized years later that was going on in every area of the country. It was going on in St. Louis. It was going on in Cleveland. It was going on in Arizona. They'd have a local drag strip. Kid comes home from the Army, gets a good job, and goes and buys a car, takes it to the racetrack. And those are special times that was going on. You mentioned one other thing. You accused me of knowing everybody. Thank you. But I realized years ago, the first time I went through Don Garlitz's museum of drag racing, I saw that car in Pittsburgh, and I saw that car at Pittsburgh. I saw that driver in Pittsburgh. I didn't see that car. It never came off the West Coast, but I saw that car in Pittsburgh. I saw that. And at the end of the day, I says, oh my God, how'd they do that? They all came through crisscrossing the country. And we get to see them. We got to see them. We got to talk to them, hang in the pits and watch them work on their motors and tear them apart, put them together, and go make another pass. So we were fortunate that just a good time period.
See, I love the time period thing. When I first got to PRP,
yeah.
Chuck Tarosi, remember the blue Oldsmobile?
Sure. It's
for dude,
sale.
He would. I might buy it if he's actually selling it.
Yeah, I'll give you a deal.
But no, it made me. He would show up at the track. He would drive it to and from work, and he was throwing those drag slicks on. He would roll in. He'd get to the track about an hour early. He was jacking it up, changing the tires, and I would sit there, because I would sit there in awe, just like trying to remember back. And I was like, how many times was it done here in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s? And now I'm getting to see it now. It's like, that's a tradition.
That's
like, to me, it was like, and you didn't see many people doing that.
Chuck,
you know what I mean? And I was like, man, is that something that's lost?
That's good. It's just good racing, just drive to the track, race, drive home, hopefully.
Well, that's what I always imagined that you were seeing in the 60s. You know what I mean? Is that you saw the guys roll in with their street tires.
Yeah,
they pull over to the side in the grass and they jack them up and
slicks on, open exhaust. It's like, oh man, I blew a rear. How am I getting home? Well, we'll work on that.
Yeah, that was the thought to me. Like, what if he blows it up at the track? Like, how's he getting home?
That was always an issue. So,
like, I loved that because it was like, you got to trust what you're working on, and you got to trust your vehicle.
We got my buddy Jimmy Henderson, and he was in the high school band with my brother, and they were the ones that went to the races over in Ohio and said, this is really cool. And they went back next week and started racing. But they talk about driving from Pittsburgh out to Indy to race the Nationals and racing and driving home.
They drove the car from
Pittsburgh to Indy back in the 60s. Yeah. And raced Nationals and drove home. It's like, what could go wrong here? It's like, oh, geez.
Oh, you'd never hear that now. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna run. You'd never
Uh,
even see that or
I sit
fathom
up,
that.
I sit up in a tower and I watch these toter homes and tractor trailers coming in with race cars in them. I said, oh my goodness, people, I just, if you were big time, if you were flat towing and you had tow hubs on your car, you were big time back in the 60s.
If you just towed your car there.
Oh yeah, my God, they're towing in, so tow car was some old beat up rat. But did you see our PID book yet?
I
This
think I bought one because you had. Oh no, I haven't.
It's now a word from our sponsor. So Bill Truby and Bill Holt went together and put together the 1964 and 1976 Pittsburgh International Dragway. And I tell people, since that was the muscle car era, there's like 800 pictures of all muscle cars back in the day. The whole book is all muscle cars. And so it was, we finally got it published, put it together. So we've been selling them. They're $25 and $5 shipping and handling. We can we can mail them all over the country for $5. So
And you get that off your website, and we'll get your website address from you. You said.
yeah, we have a Facebook page and a website. So Pittsburgh International Dragway. So
That'd be cool. Like that way, it helps you guys out and keeps the reunion going. Because I know that Bill Truby put all those pictures that one time up.
yep.
I can't remember where I saw them all.
They're still on Pittsburgh International Dragway I'm sorry, I said it backwards. Pittsburgh International Dragway website has all the pictures posted up. This is hundreds and hundreds of pictures from that era of frontage and dragsters and muscle cars. So Bill put them out there for everybody to enjoy. And you could
It must have been where I saw them because I remember going through there because I was looking for inspiration for one of my paintings.
Okay.
I remember I was going through there and I was like, oh heck yeah.
So, but it's all the book publishers holler at me. It's a $40 book, but we sell it for $25. We want it. We did it for the racers and for the memories and for the families, the racers. And so we sold almost 1,000 copies of it over the last year and a half. So it's been a hit.
So, well, not to change subjects too far, but I got it on my notes right here.
Yeah.
So when did you meet Mrs. Senkewitz? Because I know you guys have been together for a while.
I just ran into her the other day. No, it's been 1965. I met her in 1965.
So she was out there watching you out racing.
So I took her to
watching you like running the racing.
Mrs. Senkewitz was a model. She didn't even own a pair of sneakers. So I took her to the drag races. She said, "What?" So we put her to work in the tower. So she was running the clocks, the old Crondac clocks. She used to have 2 people, one in each lane. And so she worked in the tower when I was out there running the starting line back in 66, maybe 67. So we got married in 67. So and that worked well with her in the tower and me on the starting line. So when they promoted me you have to hear her tell the story. They promoted me up into the announcer. So you have one young lady on the left side and one young lady on the right side. And the announcer stands in the middle, that old Crondac setup. And you could read the time, 11:68, 100 mile an hour in the right lane, 12:03, 102 mile an hour in the right lane. So I was up there announcing my little heart out one day, and the girl in the left lane screwed up. Guy goes bombing down the track. She didn't have the clock reset, so he's not getting the time. So I pat her on the back. I says, "Hun, be careful. The guy just bombed down the track, and we're gonna have to give him another run." So about an hour later, my wife screws up on the clock. I looked at her, I said, "What the hell? Is this too tough?" Mistake. So next week I'm getting ready to go to the drag races. I said, "Hun, you're not getting ready?" She says, "Nope." Nope. That was it. She was done. We worked together one day in the tower together. that was it. So she quit. She retired right then and there. So that was it. So she had a good time. So, but I'm blessed. She puts up with me. Hey, hon, I'm going to Vegas. Have a nice trip there. So, as a matter of fact, she had a major back operation scheduled that week that I was supposed to be in Vegas the year before, and she pushed it back a week. So I says, "I'll get your back taken care of." No, she says, "I'll wait a week." So she got her operation the week after I come back from SEMA. So she puts up with all my adventures here.
That's pretty awesome. I didn't even know that about when you went to SEMA, that she was
Yeah.
gonna have back surgery when you got back. That's crazy.
So she had laser back surgery. That's another. So no, what a blessing from God. So she just understands. She understands what I'm doing, and it's about the racer. It's about the racer. I do all the reunions and do a couple car cruises every year. Do the World of Wheels PID display. We do the big race at Keystone. We do the PID Keystone Nostalgia Nationals. We have the big race at the end of the summer, and so I'm always involved with that and spending time. It works. So I couldn't, I give her more credit. I said I couldn't do this without the backing, So we're fun.
Well,
So,
that's the true story about it, is that you got like behind a lot of guys, there's a real strong woman, it's just
yeah,
believes in you and can allow you to do what you're wanting to do and everything like that.
it's truth. We started about 20 years ago with we had a group of guys on the internet just talking old time drag racing, nostalgia drag racing. And I said, well, we ought to get everybody together because they don't know each other. All they know is clicking on keyboards. This is before Facebook, it's just so I said, well, some of the guys lived out east, some guys lived out west, some guys lived north of Pittsburgh, and some lived south. And I said, I'm right in the center. So, hey, Donna, we're going to have a Christmas party. Okay. So I invited 40 guys over for a Christmas party. Okay. She said, I'll make meatballs and hot sausage. So we have a Christmas party every year. She puts up with our silliness. Good stuff.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's like good stuff. She understands. I tell the story when we got married in '67, and there's a piece of drag racing history right there. Did you ever hear about the NASCAR division of drag racing?
No.
NASCAR division of drag racing. It just doesn't quite roll off your tongue. The drag race division of NASCAR. NASCAR drag race division. It just doesn't work. We ran the drag race division of NASCAR out of Pittsburgh, out of our PID track. We had 42 tracks sanctioned with the NASCAR division of drag racing across the country, East Coast, Central, nothing on the West Coast, but we had 42 tracks. It was a major sanctioning body. And we would sit in Joanne Lewis's living room every winter and write the rule book. And we ran that all out of Pittsburgh, the NASCAR drag race division. So Dawn and I got married in '67 in November. In December, I looked at her one day. I said, "Oh, you know what? Did I mention that I'm headed to Daytona Beach in February for the drag races? Did I mention a bunch of us guys are going?" I'm saying to my new bride, "Did I mention? Did I forget to tell you?" So Donna was divorced, and we had a 5-year-old when we got married. So she says, "Jim, you got a family?" And I says, "Oh, I forgot to tell you about that." I said, "Well," so we ran the nationals for the NASCAR division of drag racing in DeLand, Florida, which is right outside of Daytona. We ran that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday was the finals. And then Sunday, we all went to the Daytona 500, 1968, that was. So,
oh, that's cool as heck.
Yeah, so I explained to my bride, I says, it's work, they're paying me. So yeah, okay. So they gave us $100 for the week. And
Well, that's probably decent back then, though, wasn't it?
yeah, and they paid for all of our meals, and they paid for our gas. They gave us 2 cars, and paid for our hotel on the beach, and they gave us free tickets for the Daytona 500. So life was good. So so it's like, so she didn't kill me right then and there. So I knew I was good for the long run here. So that was I got to run the starting line. I was running the starting line at PID then, and I got to run the starting line for the NASCAR division of drag racing nationals in Florida.
How many years did they run that for?
So I'm thinking about 5, 6 years, maybe 7 years, and finally NASCAR says, "Nah, that's enough of that. We're circle track." And they didn't even know what branding was back then, but they knew that nah. So they pulled the plug on it. But, it was cool being involved in that.
That's a real interesting thing. I never even knew that, like that NASCAR was even involved in drag racing. Because to me, you always think it was, they always always say its roots was in moonshining and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
I'd honestly have more respect for NASCAR knowing that they at least played in the drag strip like world for a little while. Knowing the company had evolved, but I think maybe they hide it.
Ed Wutzberger owned Heidelberg Circle Track here in Pittsburgh, and the track opened like 48, I think 49. But he's the one that built the drag strip for us, and they flew out. Walt Mincer and Chuck Campbell owned the property, and Walt Mincer was the manager, and Ed Wutzberger was the owner of the tracks, and they flew out to California to meet with Wally Parks. And
Wally Parks.
Yeah, so with NHRA, and Chuck Campbell owned the airports, so he had the planes. So they flew out to California to talk to Wally about this new track that they were building, and they wanted a national event. And Wally Parks blew them off. So they didn't bother flying back to Pittsburgh. They flew right to Daytona from California and talked to Bill France and said, "We're going to start our own division of drag racing." Okay. So they did. So they flew back home to Pittsburgh, and we started out of Pittsburgh. Just a little piece of history.
I didn't know that. That's kind of cool.
Nah.
Like, the reason I perked up when I heard Wally Parks, like I love all the old Wally Parks because he took so many pictures.
Yeah.
In history and stuff like that, as he was doing everything, as the drag safari, all that stuff. That guy took some of the most influential pictures, like, of my life. When I go, a lot of the pictures I think of drag racing are usually like a Wally Parks picture of some sort or something he was into. Because like you said, he was in the NHRA, and then like after he got away from that, he got into like, I almost feel like he had a soul searching time where he was kind of going from track to track, and it was like he was trying to find his home, and that's when he found his way to the magazines, because there was like all those pictures that he had from everywhere else.
He was definitely, he put it together for us. The NHRA set the standard, still is.
Well, that's what I like about the different ways is IHRA seems more like the guy at home racer, and NHRA seems like more like the professional series.
Yeah. NHRA still has their has their local tracks programs set up. But, you still think of them as the national events.
But it's never, their NHRA geared stuff for their local tracks is never geared towards like the rules, or more still geared towards, because they're still using the NHRA rule book, which is a tighter rule book, which is more expensive, which you got to have, if you run 12 seconds, or I think it's like a 10:30, or it used to be, you had to have a roll bar, but NHRA stuff, if you run a 12, you got to have a roll bar, so it's like you incur the cost sooner.
I hear you. Another piece of drag racing history that came out of Pittsburgh. So the early days, everything was stock classes, unless you went to modified production or gasser classes, right? So everybody would run stock. So I explained to people about the male ego. So the guy comes home from the Army, gets a job in the mill, buys a Chevy, brings it to the track. Zoom, he goes 1710. You know. So next week he comes back with that same Chevy. He takes the spare tire out of it, tunes it up a little bit. He runs 17 flat. So next week he comes back. He's got new plug wires, new plugs in it. He goes to 1698. So next week he comes back. He bought new tires for the back. So he goes to 1690. So the next week he comes back. We open the hood and he's got this big ass carburetor on there. It's like, no, you can't do that. Well, what do you mean? It's like, no, you can't run stock with that, with a big carburetor. It's got to be the stock carburetor. Oh, well, you can run modified production. Now you need a roll bar, scatter shield, a helmet, seat belts, strap, you know. Guy says, what? This guy's got like $12 in his pocket, and we're telling him you need $2,000 worth of equipment. So guess what? We send him down the road. You can't race. But this was happening over and over and over and over and over and over again. So, so at some point, you have to look at this like a businessman. This is not good. You're sending your customers down the road, right? So we would always, a big part of our racing day was spent at the sportsman club down the road. After the races were over, we'll get down and have a couple beers to wash down the what you were talking about, the smoke and the fumes and the dust, the dirt. So, but we would discuss what went on, what transpired that day. So, so we came up with the idea that Jimmy Henderson still has a sheet of paper where he wrote out rules that day for a new class. So you could take the front bumper off your car and still fall into this class, or you could put a big carburetor on and still fall into this class. But you couldn't do both. If you took the bumper off and put a big carburetor, you got to go into modified production or a gas class or an altered class. You need all of them. So we drew up with, so this will work. You could do one little thing or another thing. So we started a whole new eliminator. So to fit in between modified production and stock class. So what are we going to call it? This is going to be a problem. We need a name for it. So, how about factory experimental or something? I says, no, listen, I'm the manager of the track. We're going to call it reject stock. We've been rejecting all these people down the road. So we came up with a new class and we announced it that following week, reject stock. And we explained the rules. You know, you could put a bigger carburetor on, or you could take the front bumper off, but you couldn't do both. You can do modify a little bit, you know. Reject stock. So pretty soon people were building for reject stock. That was one of our most popular classes because of the male ego. I want to make my Chevy go a little faster. I want to make my Ford go a little faster, you know. But I don't want to build a gasser, you know. So we ran reject stock for several years. And it was one of our most popular classes because it was a good hot rod class. You know, you could come out there, soup up your car, and still get in. I was
gonna say, that almost sounds like super stock of the day now.
So the super stock was that was guys going out and buy a 426 Hemi or a 427. So I'm talking about guys with 289s and 327s. And they weren't super stock. It was reject stock. So we totally disrespected them as much as we could and embarrassed them, and they loved it and they just built for it. It was a very popular class. It was a money-making business adventure because people came out and raced it, and the spectators loved it. You know, because you had stock and super stock and you had modified production and gassers, but they liked reject stock. It was cool because they knew they were souped up a little bit, you know. So
that's why I always loved watching modified class. You know, because it's like I hate the boxes, and you always seem to have more people show up for modified class.
Yeah.
You know, I'm even not a fan of a trans brake. I know they're great and everything else like that, and they get you out of the hole quick. But I mean, like it feels like it takes some of the fun away from it, and it's almost like they've taken themselves out of the car.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you know,
Nobody,
and then they got the sensors on the car on the box cars that sense the light that release your trans brake for you, and you just got to tune that to know what your air pressure is in your tires because of the heat. And it's like, man, you guys have gotten away from the fun of this and turned it into a big math problem.
I had a bunch of guys tuning their Mustangs in the staging lanes last year. And I walked by hollering at them. I said, "You didn't even open the hood." You don't have to open the hood anymore, Jim. You just plug your laptop in underneath the dash and tune the car up, put a new tune on it. I said, life's changed, but it's a different game. There's nothing wrong with it. It's still competition, but we had fun. So we had new owners come in, leased our track back in PID, and when they found out we had reject stock, which was politically incorrect, they made us change it to factory experimental or something. But we had reject stock. It was great. Good stuff. Piece of history.
So, from all of your years racing and stuff like that, what is your favorite memory that you have from all of it?
Wow, that's an unfair question. I have a lot of favorite memories. We'll be here another 10 hours. Now, I tell people I was blessed. I just got to do this every week after week after week back in the 60s and 70s. And then now I came out of retirement 10 years ago, and I get to do this week after week at Keystone. And I just thoroughly enjoy myself with it. I just, I've had, you can tell I've been fortunate. I've got to meet a lot of big name racers and watch people come up in racing, and just.
Well, something I've loved when I was at or Keystone or Pittsburgh Raceway with you,
Yeah.
is you'd see a car, and you could remember that car racing at PID, and you could remember the guy who drove it then, the guy who drove it last, the guy who drove it before him, and the guy who was currently driving it.
Yeah.
And you would announce it up there, and it was cool because sometimes a lot of those guys would be there.
That's racing history. I enjoy the history part of it, going back. It's about the racers. I just remind myself it's about the racers. It's fun watching the cars. You never know what shows up. It's been amazing in the last 50 years to see the difference in the technology, how technology has improved the speeds and mile an hour ETs. My buddy Jimmy Henderson put it in perspective for me. He says, Senkewitz, he said, when we talk to kids, young people about racing back in the 60s, and they look at us kind of funny with deer in the headlight, like, he says, if somebody would have came up to us in, say, 1965 and talked to us about racing 50 years earlier, it would have been racing in 1915. I said, "Oh my God, you're right. All right, Chad." I said, a lot's changed the last 50, 60 years in drag racing, but it's still the same game. Line up, first one to the stripe. It's the competition.
See, I always imagine coming back after World War II, because that's when drag racing got its heat. Because everybody came back after the war. Nitrous was a new thing.
Yeah.
You could buy Model A's for dirt cheap.
Yeah.
And it was on fire. And it was such on fire all the way, I call it the mid-60s, early mid-60s is when it really lit.
Mm-hmm.
The 50s, it was like they were getting oppressed, everything like that. And then the fire just, like when it started burning, like I think it was like 61, 62 West Coast that it really started pushing. And that's when everything just blew up.
And I tell people, a lot of us had to be 19 right there. You could be jealous. It's okay.
Oh, I honestly am jealous for like that moment that happened in that history. It was so cool because like all of a sudden production vehicles were on board. So you had manufacturers on board. You had it was socially unacceptable in 1950 to go race your car.
Oh,
It
you
was
were
really,
hooligans. Yes.
ooh, faux pas, you were a hot rodder.
Yep.
They used to call them finks.
Yeah. There you go. There you
And
go.
like it was such a cool thing. And then all of a sudden, the entire culture shifted. Like, and it just literally complete flip flop. You were the devil. Now you're going to make us money. We like you. You're awesome. You're amazing.
Yep.
And you've been embraced by everyone.
I
And I don't think cars will ever have that again. You know what I mean? With electric and everything like that coming in, I almost believe that was like a symphony of our time.
have Tom Tignelli, who was one of the original Ram Chargers. He was one of the engineers at Chrysler, and his dad had a garage on Woodward Avenue.
Oh.
You get these guys. He comes in usually and helps us with the World of Wheels, judging cars. But he comes in and they start telling stories about them. Hey, try this carburetor, try this camshaft, try these heads, stuff that followed them out of the big three. They go street racing with this stuff back in the early 60s. He come over last year. He's holding out his hand like a grandfather would with a nickel for you. And I hold out my hand. He drops a hood pin in my hand. I said, "What is this? Why am I holding this?" He said, "It's a titanium hood pin. Chrysler made it." Chrysler may not have known they made it, but Chrysler made it a titanium hood pin. How much weight would that save you in the front of your Superstar? And he says he still had a couple of them. So he also brought last year from Detroit. He brought in a titanium torsion bar. He said, nearest we can figure, it cost $10,000 a piece back in the 60s to make a titanium torsion bar for racing. But this is the factory out the back door supporting the racers to win on
to be able to win
on Sunday, to sell on Monday. It was there was a lot going on. So the Tom Tignelli's he had a hobby of making knife handles. You ever see those fancy big Bowie knives and all that? Mm-hmm. So he would carve them in it. So he brought one into Chrysler to the office one day to give to somebody, and they started joking around, and they thought this would make a cool shifter handle. So he's the one that sat down and designed the pistol grip.
Oh, sweet.
This is just the good old hot rodders, working in the big three, so.
That's kind of fun to even know where that even comes from, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's Tom Tignelli. He's just a hot rodder. He had the UFO super stockers, ultra stockers back in the day. So he raced. He went in with you get to sit down and talk with these guys. It's like, oh man, just put some duct tape on my mouth and make me listen here. This is history. This is the way it started back in the.
Well, that's why I enjoy talking to you, because it's the stuff that's going to disappear. A lot of people are going to forget about all the stuff these guys have done.
Nope.
You know what I mean? Because books haven't been written around a lot of these guys.
Yep.
And they've told so many stories and so much has been learned from what they've done. We're all just going to forget it because we've already got to this step. We don't want to show our math.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, hey, man, let's show the math. It's all right. Show how we got to where we're at.
Piece of history.
Oh yeah. Well, that's where I love. Like when I was out in Pittsburgh, I was going through the junkyards out there, not just to look at, like, you're not going to pull a good car out of a Pittsburgh junkyard. It's not going to happen. You know that. They're rusty. But the cars you get to see in that junkyard tell more of a story, because the guys that are keeping them, trying to keep them as good as they can, but most of them are the race cars, or, they got some sort of heritage. You find these cars that just, you couldn't believe what people are doing and putting together. You know what I mean? It's like, wow, it's freaking amazing. Like, I saw one, there was somebody I had to look it up and find the story, but it was a guy who took a Toronado. It would have been like a 71. No, When did they start making the front wheel drive Tornados?
66.
Okay, so it would have been one of the early Tornados, and they used one engine in the front and an engine in the back, and they used two Tornado drivetrains. And it was the Pittsburgh.
It was Joe Schubeck did that.
Yes.
Yeah, Joe Schubeck. The Hearst Oldsmobiles, right? Hearst put that car together, and they called Joe Schubeck. Says, "Could we dress you up in a tuxedo and have you travel the country with Linda Vaughn?" Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay. So that's what he did. He drove that car. I think it was a horrendous piece of equipment. So,
well, and that was the cool thing. I went to this junkyard. It was south of Pittsburgh.
yeah.
And it was inside of this guy's barn, up on the rafters kind of thing, up in the air. And it's just sitting there. And I'm just like, why would this not be in a museum? Why would... He's like, well, it's not one of the cool cars. It didn't win nothing. I'm like, it's got two engines. Like, this was racing. You could tell they raced it. It looks like they just pulled it off the race trailer.
Millerstown Pickup Park? Is that where you were? Where'd you go?
No, that wasn't at Millerstown. I don't even remember.
I don't remember.
It was. I could drive there probably, but I can't remember the guy's name. Millerstown always had good stuff.
Yeah,
but no, this was one that a guy that had it up on a hill, and he had like almost like 1,000 acres of cars. And he had the barn on top of the hill, and the barn on top of the hill had that Oldsmobile, and it had like basically two 4x4s, like a forklift underneath the car holding it up.
I'll have to go find that one now. You got me curious.
I've got his number if you want to see it.
Yeah, send me his number. I'll find it. I love fair. I've done that over the years. We started doing garage tours where people sitting there talking about Joe Schubeck or somebody. I said, he's still alive, you know. Let's call him. Let's go see him, you know. So really, so I took about 15 guys over to how about the Arfons brothers. They raced in the 50s, into the 60s. They ran all the green monsters with the Allison aircraft engines, and then they switched over to jet engines, and then they did the Bonneville, the unlimited classes. And so I made the phone call. We went over, and it was a year after Art Arfons had passed away. So Timmy Arfons gave us a trip around the garage and the offices and so forth. Then we went out to lunch, and then in the afternoon, Walt Arfons was still alive. He was like 93 years old. So his son brought him out, and we set up a bunch of memorabilia in the garage. They had a big 2-car garage, and we had him sitting there telling stories about racing back in the 50s and that. So he said after the war, you could buy parts, you could buy engines like those Allison aircraft engines, still in a crate for like $100. You know, they were Army aircraft engines. Well, they were no good for nothing, you know. So that's when they built a couple of those dragsters with 1,710 cubic inches when everybody else was running 239 cubic inch flatheads, you know. So he said they ran that Green Monster with the Allison aircraft engine in it for a couple of years. So he said one day they got a call. They get up here to the depot. That everybody knows World War II, the hot rod airplane was the P-38, P-39 Lightning. Was
the P-38.
P-38 with the dual beams and 2 engines. They said, we just got an engine in, P-38 engine in. Come on up. So they ran up and bought this P-38 Lightning engine, brought it back to the garage up on Pickle Road in Akron, Ohio, and they pulled the motor out of their Green Monster dragster and threw this P-38 Lightning motor in. This is going to be great, man. They fired that puppy up. He said they wound it up, dumped the clutch, whoop, backwards. We forgot to remind you that P-38 Lightning, one engine rotates one way and one engine rotates the other way. The keep it under control. It's like, oh, so they said they changed the camshaft in it, and ran it front ways after that.
That's crazy.
It's like, you can't make this stuff. We got to get this written down somewhere. These are great stories. So, Bobby,
Oh yeah, well that's the cool thing about, like, that's what I loved about when I was out at Pittsburgh. It's like I could go so many places and find so much drag race history. And I found one of those Stone, Woods, and Cooks doors
oh, really?
out there. Yeah, a guy had it on a wall out there, and I was like, "Where'd you get it?" He's like, "Oh, they put it in a wall at Keystone in 71, and I found it on the other side of the fence, and we straightened the roof and we put it on the wall. It's been there since 71." And I was like,
hang in there.
"Yeah," and I'm like, "Wow, like that's, do you realize how important that door? Like that door, somebody out there's restoring that car.
Yeah,
and that door is probably worth like 50 grand."
they lived over in Ohio. They weren't that far away from Pittsburgh. They were Stonewoods, of course. They were Akron almost. We went
so
over
cool.
to there's two guys, I can't think of their names. They're 7 miles south of Canton, Ohio, and they build nostalgia gassers. This is what these guys do. So Bobby Wenzelberger says, we got to go see this garage. So we go over there, and everywhere you look is another Willys and another Willys and another old Hemi and another old school, and they're building old school gassers for you. So I looked, and they had the gasser passer, the Hearst gasser passer. It was an Anglia. Remember, the car was gold.
I know the car, yeah.
It was a 4-door. It was a 4-door. Nobody raced a 4-door. It was a 4-door. But they found that car, and it had been chopped up, and this guy raced it, and that guy raced it, but they wanted to put it back to stock. They wanted to put it back the way it was raced back in the day, with the gold paint, but somebody had chopped the top on this thing. So they're telling me all about this car and what they're going to do with it, and they're going to unchop the top. I said, Did you hear what you just said? I've never heard that all in one sentence before. We're going to unchop the top. So they did. The cars, I saw it. It was still in primer last time. I saw a picture of it showed up somewhere, but they found the George Montgomery drove it, the Hearst gasser passer, but they unchopped the top on that car and put it back. So I talked to George.
I love the fact that people are bringing those back, though. But go ahead. Yeah. What are you saying?
I talked to, they restored Ohio George Montgomery's turbocharged Mustang. And they had it at the PRI display last year out in Indy. And it was beautiful. So I went over. The car was so fast, they outlawed it. Nobody could keep up with it. It's like, no, you can't do that. So someone over, I was talking to him, and I said, you realize that if you go to any drag strip today, what you're going to see is turbocharged Mustangs. They're the hottest things going. I said, you were 50 years ahead of your time. I said, no wonder they threw you out and outlawed that car, because it was a turbocharged Mustang, 1967, 68, somewhere. So it was like,
I can't remember his name. The guy from the IHRA that used to come to the track all the time.
Johnny.
Yeah, Johnny O.
Johnny O'Brien. Yeah.
I got to sit down drinking with him one night, and we were talking about drag racing, and we were talking about like John Force and stuff like that. And he brought up a point I've never thought of it before. He goes, "Why does John Force not run a turbo?" And I was like, honestly, I don't know. And he goes, because they'd make too much power.
Yeah.
He goes, they'd be more unregulated. He goes, they limit them every year.
Yeah.
He goes, look back in 1992. So I was like, well, yeah. Well, he goes, remember how fast they run? They were in 300 mile an hour. I was like, yeah. And he goes, they restrictor plated them. They cut them down on how many cubes they can run. He goes, they restrict those guys so far. He goes, if they let those guys loose, he goes, they'd probably be in the 2s, the 1s.
Yeah. Yeah. They had.
I was like, wow. It never had ever occurred to me that they were holding back. I always assumed there was some wall.
No. I went to Indy 1972, and they made the announcement that after Top Fuel, after Top Funny Car, they were going to have an exhibition pass. with a hydrogen peroxide rocket car. I says, you're not going anywhere. There's always a traffic jam trying to get out of the parking lot anyhow. I said, well, I said, I'm going to stay and watch this thing. And the kid ran 340 mile an hour back in 1972. So Top Fuel was running, 250s. And it was like, but there's no wall out there. They just have to keep holding them back. So it's.
Well, that's the crazy part is like, I almost wonder if there was and I mean, they probably do it for insurance regulations and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But like you look at the land speed record cars, like the fastest gas powered one's 400 and some miles an hour.
Yep.
And that's the fastest one that's actually powered by a shaft and not powered by a rocket.
Right.
And these guys
have two classes.
And we were doing, you just said they were doing, with the rocket propel that puts them in the same thing. But like, I know in the 80s, they were hitting 300 mile an hour,
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing that in a quarter mile. Imagine the engine technology if you actually let those guys keep going, like, hey, let's linking out the track to a mile and, see what kind of speeds we can run.
Real loose. When we mentioned my one trip to Bonneville, they introduced me to George Poteet and the Speed Demon. It's that orange 30-foot long thing with a fin in the back and the cockpit up front. You've seen pictures of him. And I'm standing there trying not to act stupid. I know nothing about what's going on here. I'm shaking the man's hand, trying not to act stupid. So I ask him, what do you got in it? It's a good, safe question, right? What do you got in it? He says, small block Chevy. I says, oh, this guy's going to yank my chain. He says, 2,700 horsepower. I said, now I know he's yanking my chain. I says, time out. I fell off the turnip truck, but not yesterday. I said, really? He said, oh, no, really. He says, I got the B engine in there, 388 cubic inches. We have it detuned back to just a little over 2,700 horsepower. It's like, oh, I got nothing. I can't even carry on the rest of this conversation. It's like, oh, this is a different world. I just walked into a different world here. So just then, here comes the TV crew and the cameras and the grip and all that, and they're interviewing them. They're asking the same question. What do you got in it? 388 cubic inches. I guess he's not lying. I detuned it down to just a little over 2,700 horsepower. So after the interview, my buddy asked him, what are you going to run with it? And he says, I don't know. He said, I'll go out there and put down a number for everybody to worry about. And he went out Saturday morning and ran 440 mile an hour with the same engine that we just drove out in the camper with. Small block. So it's a different world. It's that turbocharged thing. That's just amazing. The turbos are that big.
Oh yeah, it's amazing how far technology's come from the 60s till now to what guys are doing.
Yeah.
And I actually love where technology's going. I love these electric cars. Me and you were talking before we started.
Yeah.
Electric. It's kind of fun seeing them zip down the track, not making any noise, but when it's still giving you the speed and the thrill,
you can hear the tires whining going down there. It's great.
Well, wait till the hot rodders start figuring out how to tune up a Tesla. And start going into the open code and being able to lay down more power. Mm-hmm. It's going to happen just like it did back then. I think it's going to be a fun little era.
It's just the way for the future. I love it. I've been blessed.
I know. I got the lot. What's that?
I've been blessed. I got the lot to watch a lot of the bridge, from the old and the new.
Oh yeah, I think you were around during the perfect time. Like
yeah, I've been blessed.
So many epic things that happened during that time period.
Okay.
I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know we've been going on for a couple hours now.
Oh my God. Yeah, we'll have. Sorry about that.
Oh no, that's perfect. It's what we do, brother. See, and you were worried.
Good to visit with you. I miss you. I need you back in the staging lanes. Come on.
I'll come back out and I'll hop in them staging lanes any day, brother.
Put you to work.
But I'll make sure we send everybody over to your PID thing. Something I do with all of our guests is I like to pick out their 5 most motivating songs. We have a playlist we run on Spotify. You don't have to tell them to me now. Send them to me later. We'll create a list and we'll share that list out with everybody, and then we'll add them to our main list. So that way, our goal is we're going to have a list on Spotify where when somebody's down and kind of depressed, you need all the motivational music. You just
Okay.
plug it in, and you got everybody's 5 top favorites. Bam, bam. It's pretty awesome so far. It's kind of a variety. I love it.
Interesting. Interesting. Good. I'll do that. So tell everybody we have a Facebook page for the Pittsburgh International Dragway. Get some old pictures out there too. So.
And we'll share the links for you. Also, we'll get the links up and we'll share those throughout the week for you.
Good.
And man, it's just been great talking to you and great catching up. I'm gonna be sure to grab one of them books. I meant to grab one back in the day, but I forgot. So I'm glad you had it handy, and I'm gonna get me another one of them.
We just got to put together. It's the highlight of the book is I told him we'll get this thing published. I said, except we're putting my picture on the front page. That's me running the starting line at the old tracks. Goofing around. Never made it.
And I know we'll put up the
fun.
link for the page too, because I know Truby's got pictures of Keystone back in the day too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Which are some of the coolest pictures to see, how the people are up on the hill and looking down on the track, and just the perspectives he took from that time period, and the people like what they're driving and how they got there. And he had pictures of rollbacks, which I got a kick out of. Everybody was taking their old Chevy and Fords and putting those slant backs on there to take their drag cars.
If you were big time, you'd see Sox and Martin and Grumpy Jenkins coming in with their rollbacks. It's like that was big time if you had something like that.
Well, it was, and that's what I thought was cool is he has all the pictures of all of it.
Bill's
it kind of goes through the era.
Bill's our historian. He just captured all those, and we just got a few more pictures last week and a few more the week before, and we just get one off of this guy and 2 off of that guy, and we'll funnel them all through Bill, and Bill puts them out there so we can all enjoy them instead of sitting in a box in the closet. So.
Oh yeah, and I know that it's always great seeing them too, because it's like get to see history and get to like relive it. And I know that like I've seen on Facebook every once in a while you guys will post a picture and try and figure out who the person was in the car.
Oh yeah. What was that guy's name? Had the red Chevy? I said it was 50 years ago. I don't remember. when he pins up his pictures, when we have a banquet, he'll pin up pictures, or we have the nostalgia race at the track. He has like 10 4x8 sheets, particle board. He'll pin up pictures around, and you'll hear people go through and, oh, there's Joey's GTO. Oh, here's Joey's GTO down here. And that's when he put the big motor out. And oh, here's Joey's GTO when he sold it to Ralph, and Ralph wrecked it, remember? And then you hear, so you go around and you follow people around, you hear the whole history of just one car. And then you go through with another group and there's Joey Chevy. Oh yeah, that's where you put that. That's when his wife wrecked it, So you hear all these stories about the history of each car. So, but every one of those pictures, and it's the same thing with the book, every one of those pictures has a story behind it. It's about the people. It's about the racers. So, good stuff.
Yeah, I'll actually probably have to get Bill Truby on again someday. Maybe get both you guys on at the same time, get you guys having some fun together.
No, you couldn't deal with both of us together.
It's kind of fun because next week I got another photographer on. I got Chris Gosda on.
That's going to be big. He shot a lot of big races. That's great.
So it'd be fun. So, but I want to thank you so much, Jim, for coming on, and thank you so much for your time. And we'll probably have you on again soon.
Get me before race season. That's all.
Oh, definitely. Maybe we'll get you up in the tower.
Oh, that would be. We could do that. That works. That works. Chevy in the left lane. That's what we do here. All right, DJ. Take care, man. Good seeing you.
Good seeing you too, brother. Thank you so much, man. And I'm glad to see you staying safe from the COVID, brother.
Oh yeah, got to. I fall into all those groups they talk about all of a sudden.
Yeah, I already had to go through it. I don't want to make any of it. That sucks.
Not fun. So praise the Lord. We've been good. So God bless you. Have fun.
God bless you too, brother. And thank you again, man. And you have a great day.
I'll see you. Peace.
See you later.